predictable, certain, simple, unequivocal. If this describes your organisation, you might not need to listen to what follows. Drawing on client experiences and the practice and scholarship sitting behind the MDV approach, our white paper in these slides outlines a pragmatist guide to using vertical concepts and tools to operate in a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, that's VUCA, world. Consistently hearing from clients that their existing leadership interventions were not delivering the leaders they need, MDV Consulting started exploring how to develop leaders who would thrive in increased complexity, ambiguity and uncertainty. Leading us to the world of vertical, this white paper is the culmination of several years of theoretical research and practical application. Most of the issues facing leaders in both the public and private sector are not like the complicated technical problems of the past. Problems that could be addressed by smart people working hard. The challenges have become more complex, more multidimensional, and now require multiple solutions. The 5 megatrends shown here are not new. It's the speed with which they are colliding which is creating complexity, uncertainty, and volatility. Here are examples of how business challenges are changing. Turbulence and uncertainty have undermined the effectiveness of long-range forecasting and traditional strategic planning. Companies are increasingly organised into interdependent, multi-company ecosystems. The pervasiveness and economics of digital communication have made every business an information business. In such an environment, how can leaders ensure that their organisations are reading the right signals and acting on them? Society's interest in the social and ecological impacts of business makes it imperative for companies to consider the broader value and overall cost of their strategies. Professor Robert Keegan coined the phrase "in over our heads," an expression of how many CEOs and business leaders are feeling when faced with the level of complexity and disruption in the world today. The VUCA world calls for a new conceptualisation of what is required from our successful leaders and how we develop them. So what are these disruptive challenges that our clients are seeing? Disruptive left-field new market entrants, for example, fintech businesses in financial services, digitalisation affecting how products and services are sold and delivered, regulatory changes impacting on business strategy, for example, the recent pensions freedom changes and recent sugar tax, the impending impact of Brexit on aspects such as labour supply, supply chains, vast regulatory changes, and falls in sterling inflating the cost of raw materials, and these are just a selection. So just how ready are our organisations and leaders for this unpredictability? There is much to do. Reports highlight expectations that significant social, cultural and technological changes will impact within the next 5 years, leading to calls for immediate adaptive action, a new type of senior manager who can successfully steer companies through this disruption. There are multiple factors in our environment and our experience influencing us in ways we can't understand. Cynefin is a sense-making framework. It helps make sense of challenges an organisation is facing and how they are best tackled. On the right-hand side, the world is predictable and businesses can apply known strategies to resolving the issues. In obvious scenarios, there is stability. Cause and effect is predictable. It is possible in obvious situations to see the issue, categorise it, and to follow a known procedure to sort it. This is the realm of standardised procedures in workplace, checklists, best practice, and so on. Complicated is where we spend most of our time. There may be several right answers. There is still a clear relationship between cause and effect, but it is harder to see it. I'm less able to determine the problem. I need an expert to diagnose. Here, there is some analysis required before deciding on the optimum solution. Key in the complicated world is the role of experts and good practice. There is more than one right answer. On the left-hand side, we move into the unpredictable world that so many businesses are now operating in. The complex world is unpredictable. There is flux and we can only understand in retrospect, working in a system. We can't see cause and effect. Small changes can produce major consequences, for example, Brexit. A different approach is needed. The focus is not on imposing a clear course of action, or indeed determining clear outcomes. Experimentation is key. Organisations must tolerate failure and think instead about emergent practice. Chaotic. We have no idea of cause and effect in chaotic situations. There is constant shift. There are no patterns. 9/11 is an example of this. No one knew the scale of the issue and what could be expected next. In times of chaos, we must act first to establish order. then work to move a situation from chaotic to complex. So what can we take from this? We know that responses during complex times are counterintuitive and we want to try and impose order. Often we miscategorise challenges and therefore apply the wrong approach. Some questions to ask ourselves. Of the current challenges you or your organisation are facing, where would you map them? Understanding the situation helps to assess the correct leadership response. Using the approaches suitable for the predictable world in the unpredictable makes the situation worse. For those experts who tend to operate in the right-hand predictable world of the Cynefin framework, the complex environment feels particularly discombobulating. So as our world becomes more volatile, unpredictable, and our leaders are dealing with not just complicated but increasingly complex challenges, we need to find wiser ways. The ability of leaders to do business in this emerging world goes beyond subject area or expertise. They need to build their underlying capacity to think, act and relate in different ways, rather than drawing upon their usual qualities to just react as efficiently as possible. The vertical development term has arisen from attention to adult development theories which underpin some of our key concepts. Through our lives, we all progress through a number of stages which represent advancement in our thinking capability. This goes well beyond cognitive capacity. It's not just the why, but the how. Horizontal approaches tend to develop people's knowledge and skills and work with them on their personal values and beliefs, based on what we think we already know about leadership. Vertical development approaches do not focus on knowledge or skills, and they do not seek to instill values or beliefs, although these aspects can be added into the mix. Vertical approaches focus on the internal capacities of the person, in particular their ability to handle complexity and to sense-make in ambiguous and uncertain situations. They help people to move through developmental stages. If people are having to work in complex conditions, there is a need to develop new capacities. Our research has identified 3 underlying capacities, each critical for successful leadership in the new world. All 3 interrelate. Conceptual is an enriched version of the cognitive domain and is concerned with how I relate to the world of ideas, models, frameworks, the contexts within which I operate. Personal includes self-regulation and personal development, my thoughts, feelings and internal senses of the world, my responses to the world and how I respond back. Interpersonal, how do I relate to the others that I know, their perspectives and ways of operating, the wider social environment in which I operate. How do my actions affect my social environment and the results that are created? The interpersonal strand acts like the knitting of the other 2. This capacity becomes more important in a world of complexity as a range of perspectives is increasingly critical. Our research has also identified a number of capabilities which help us to see what the capacities look like in practice for leaders. We're interested in how things show up in the way people respond in their day-to-day world. They could be regarded as enacted capacities. In relation to volatility, we have promoting inquiry. As volatility involves sudden and unexpected changes of direction, there is a need to encourage a questioning approach with an experimental and agile orientation. It is important to get people comfortable with inquiry and not just striving for simple answers. Ambiguity links to surfacing dilemmas. As ambiguity is often associated with there being a variety of best or right answers and perceived incompatibility, there is a need to pay attention to relationships and politics, ensuring dilemmas are overtly raised and appreciated. Uncertainty requires leaders to connect creatively. As uncertainty can cause inaction or confusion, there is a need to help people adapt and move forward rather than become isolated or withdrawn. This is not just bringing people together, but also encompasses new ways of doing it, including new cognitive connections. Complexity. Nudge systems. As complexity goes beyond the realms of clever planning, there is a need for consistent awareness of environmental fluctuations and weak signals, and an ability to act in small ways frequently. Experimentation and willingness to take multiple small actions is key. Innovation often comes from the intersection of ideas. The final capability is cultivate resilience. Living in a VUCA world causes great uncertainty. All of the above capabilities contribute to cultivate resilience, and vice versa. There is a virtuous cycle in the face of multiple demands. Developing as a leader in a vertical sense takes time. We reference the concept of there being a number of key development stages that adults potentially progress through in a lifetime. We work with people where they are at, helping them to deploy practices and habits that someone later in their development might naturally use. When working with individuals, we think of where they are at in a vertical sense and tailor the development interventions appropriately. When working with groups, our programme content is always tailored to fit the developmental centre of gravity of a leadership cohort, as well as to meet the participants' key content interest. Over time, and with support, the sustained use of these practices will lead to the development of new capabilities, and in time, these new capabilities may lead to a stage shift. The capacities and capabilities introduced sit within an integrating framework created by MDV Consulting, which facilitates a review of crucial factors. The framework explicitly acknowledges the extent of unpredictability and predictability. For example, in the fashion retail world, some seasonality of sales is predictable, but weather patterns or vloggers may impact the supply chain in less predictable ways. This framework helps clients discuss the different needs in their organisation, such as aligning recruitment and organisational development. The concept of practices is well established as part of adult development. The view that we are what we repeatedly do. The white paper provides a list of 5 VUCA practices which can be used daily as a regular habit, which will help us to actively build our capacity. We also provide in the document a reflective exercise to help readers think about what they are doing well, which type of environment their competitive advantage might arise from, and other practices which would help them build their capacity to deal with VUCA. You can download the complete white paper or read some related content on the links shown, or you can get in touch with us by telephone or email. Thank you for listening, and we would welcome your thoughts and feedback.